My Polish mother, very interestingly, on at least one occasion, has indicated to me that the tradition, the Judeo-Christian paradigm that came to be understood within the Polish culture and applied to the Polish culture essentially signified that within the Polish framework and understanding, the correct godly thing to do was for, in essence, children to essentially robotically follow the instructions or the imperatives of their parents as if to flat out obey them. The same kind of way that a soldier is expected to obey his commander. They're basically as if the parents give commandments and the children are supposed to obey them, purely speaking, in obedience. Interestingly, when you go to one of the principal places that most chiefly designate what the role and a type of relationship between parents and children ought to be, we have our English-based understanding of what the Ten Commandments are. Within Polish, the one that pertains to the relationship between parents and children is said or translated as czci ojca swego, your father, I matkę swoją, your mother. What is this word czci? The primary meaning and primary designation of the word czci, what it means in its essence, is essentially the word worship. All three of the major Abrahamic religions correctly designate within their original contexts and languages and frameworks that no human being is actually ever deserving of worship, and that worship is only ever meant to be given to God, to Allah. This is very important, and it is a very bad potential thwarting that the Polish structure has allowed to onset into the culture there. No wonder all of the relationships that I've seen and understood so far that stem from that culture, mine in particular, at least I can refer to from my own personal experience, are so thwarted because the parents have a altered or twisted expectation of what is to take place. I'm supposed to be worshipped. I'm supposed to be treated as if I'm the god of the house. I am as God. Worship me. And there's a secondary or tertiary implication of the word czci that can connote, in essence, the term reverence, which necessarily implicates the designation of the word fear, but in fact it's so strong that it's not even the kind of reverence that you consider in the word English reverence, but again is the kind of reverence, so to speak, that draws or tends towards the primary meaning and feeling of the word, which as here indicated is reverence bordering upon worship. That's the Polish idea of what a healthy parent-child relationship looks like. But is this what God actually told us? We'll turn in just a moment to examine this matter. But first, let's consider where in other places of that same Polish framework and Polish translated Bible, you may find, and even in English, certain English translations too, you may find that the word obey is used to give the imperative onto all people and children of parents to essentially follow strict instructions as if to obey, as one obeys a commander or a king, or just robotically to follow in obedience. Is this too the case? In order to understand this, we must look at first what the initial commandments actually said, what the commandments actually are, and then further turn to see, is it the word worship that is used in the commandment, or do other translations more closely reflect what the actual original in ancient Hebrew was telling and instilling as being the correct imperative to us given by God? And then we'll turn to look at the word, or the supposed word, obey. In fact, in ancient Hebrew, was anything anyone ever commanded to obey in the same sense that we understand through the English and even the other languages that we use now here regarding obedience? Let's take a look. In essential meaning, the word used in the original ancient Hebrew is more closely represented by the English word honor than the Polish word that essentially draws towards the extremity of the meaning by the word worship. However, even plain honor is not the fullest sense of the word within the original context. In fact, the word honor in the original Hebrew, which was the word kavod, means to be weighty. And the original commandment was an instruction for children to simply provide a higher level of weight to the parents than for all others, generally speaking. The original word kavod meant to give weight to. In other words, treat them importantly. In other words, whether things are going good or things are going bad, the commandment is to not treat them lightly or the matters with them as if they are trivial, superficial, or unimportant, but whether it is good or bad, it is still designated and allocated with higher weight and importance, that relationship. There you are. The interesting thing about the word honor or respect in Hebrew, which is essentially the word kavod, which most properly means simply the assignment of a higher level of weight, one cannot worship everybody or anybody. One cannot essentially generate reverence to simply everybody generally. However, the interesting thing is about the word in its more proper usage is that while one can demonstrate kavod to certain classes of people and of importance generally, such as parents and also others, the other thing is that kavod, within its other related semblances and senses, properly speaking, much like the word honor in English, can be given to even anyone, even your peer, generally speaking. I can honor my friend. I can honor someone in that way. And that's easier to understand. I'm not going to worship my friend, but I'm going to honor him. So as a parent, understanding what it is that you're properly entitled to from your children, this alone starts to hint at a deeper shift from the original meanings that some people and cultures in this world are given false translations and false meanings. This problem is seen in many places in the Bible. There's lots of content online and lots of channels that discuss this matter. However, let's look at one particular one now regarding the word obey. In various places we're, so to speak, commanded, if command is even the right word, to obey God. Obey, there's another word, right? Are we commanded to obey, or is it something else that we're given with a different kind of essential expectation as to how we are to regard that which God says to us. Most important. Let's proceed to look.
The Bible never calls these 2 stone tablets the 10 Commandments.
Wait, what?
Yeah, in Hebrew, this list of items delivered by God to Moses is called the Azaret HaDevarim, which means the 10 words. This is something that the Greek translators preserved when they called it the Decalogue, the 10 words. Same with the Latin Vulgate, we have the Decem Verba, and even in the 1500s, William Tyndale is still calling this list the 10 verses, which is much more neutral. Then, all of a sudden, with the King James Version, we have this curious switch to the 10 Commandments. Now, why would a king who's sponsoring a version of the Bible in order to cement his political power be interested in rebranding this list as the 10 Commandments? You'll have to stay tuned for part 2, but I do think it's important to think about what agendas have been baked into our Bible translations, because there was one word that King James did not allow in his translation of the Bible. Wait, what? Yeah, this word did appear in the other popular translation of the day, the Geneva Bible, like in Isaiah, the victim of the blank will be rescued. But King James didn't like this word, so he took it out and replaced it with something different. The victim of the terrible will be rescued. Another example would be Jeremiah 15:21, which says, I will redeem you out of the hand of the blank. Overall, in other translations, this word appears about 20 to 30 times, and in every instance, King James and his state-sponsored translators took it out, maybe because they were afraid that it could be used to criticize the monarchy. Of course, I'm talking about the word tyrant. And now you know, there was one word that King James did not allow in his translation.
It is therefore properly tyranny itself that God despises. And what is tyrannical? When someone wearing the false understanding of what they falsely believe by their grievous and huge mistake, what they falsely believe to be the proper way for a parent, or even, God forbid, worse, a mother, to treat her own children, her own son even. She is as a tyrant. Do this, do that. With the false belief he's supposed to just obey me, and I am to give out orders, and he's to follow. This is tyranny. This is what God does not permit. So, turning then to that word obedience, are we supposed to obey one as the same way as a slave obeys a master, or people generally are led to obey and follow, almost as if without choice, a tyrant?
For thousands of years, every morning and evening, Jewish people have prayed these well-known words as a way of expressing their devotion to God. They're called the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And as for you, you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your strength. Now, the first word of the Shema is hear, or listen, which in Hebrew is pronounced Shema. That's where the prayer gets its name. Now, Shema is a really common word in the Hebrew Bible, and it's obvious why. Hearing is a very universal activity. It's usually connected with the ear, as in Proverbs chapter 20, ears that shema and eyes that see, the Lord has made them both. Now that seems basic enough, but if you look at the other ways that Hebrew authors can use the word Shema, they use it to mean more than just let sound waves enter your ear. In Hebrew, Shema can also mean pay attention to or focus on. So when Leah, who wasn't loved by her husband Jacob, she has a son, and she names him Simon, or in Hebrew, Shim'on, because she says, the Lord has sham'at, that I am unloved. So Shema means to hear and to pay attention to, and even more. It can also mean responding to what you hear. This is why so many of the cries for help in the book of Psalms begin with a call that God listen. Psalm 27, verse 7. Shema my voice when I call, O Lord. Be merciful. Answer me.
And let us consider here, very importantly, this word Shema. This is the word in original Hebrew that is used where we, in our own rigid structure of language, have translated to mean the word obey. with the word, with the sense that we infuse that word of ours, obey, to essentially mean, as if to lead to tyranny, and where the Polish demand worship, king, tyrant. It's all the same energy. It's all false to begin with. None of that was supposed to be what a parent is and shows to their kids. And what's the ultimate proof here? It even shows that while the Lord himself can call for Shema from you, the people, that you, the people, can turn around and ask the Lord back for the same thing. Shema, what I am saying and calling for, O God. It's a two-way street where both ways, sensibly, it seems and feels fair. That's correct. The Lord can ask you to hear him with a stronger sense of the word, favorably, or you can ask the Lord to hear you strongly and with favor as well, where both can be doable. When you translate that into the word obey, obey is a different sense, but does it properly apply to the original function that the ancient Hebrew meant it to have? No. You don't pray to God to have him obey you. That is psycho. That's you trying to be a tyrant, which the Lord never allows. Are you starting to get any hints about how the very foundational structures of society as we run them today have been messed up because of these sick deviations and these ideas that you believe are true?
Asking God to Shema is at the same time asking God to act, to do something. It's similar to when God asks people to listen. Like when the people of Israel come to Mount Sinai, God says, "If you Shema me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all the nations you will be my treasured possession."
Very interestingly. So God actually saying, if you hear these things that I am saying, that are my words to you, you'll be blessed and you'll be my treasured possession. Sounds a lot different than if you obey the things that are the commands. See the problem now? He was never saying that.
Possession. Now, there's a couple interesting things about this verse in Exodus. In Hebrew, the word Shema is repeated twice in this sentence to give it emphasis. If you Shema, Shema, meaning listen closely. But also notice that from God's point of view, listening is basically the same as keeping the covenant. So when God asks the people to Shema, what he means is that they listen and obey. And that's the last fascinating thing about Shema. In ancient Hebrew, there is no separate word for obey, meaning to carry out the wishes of someone who knows better than you or is in authority over you. So in the Bible, if you want to say, "I will listen and do what you say," you use the single word, Shema. In Hebrew, listening and doing are two sides of the same coin. This is why later in Israel's history, when the people were breaking their covenant promises to God, the Hebrew prophets would say things like, "They have ears, but they're not listening." The Israelites, of course, could hear just fine, but they weren't actually listening, or else they would act differently. And so in the end, listening in the Bible is about giving respect to the one speaking to you and doing what they say. Real listening takes effort and action, and that's the Hebrew word Shema.
All we are commanded, so to speak, to do, or all that we are invited to hear and understand agreeably what to do, is to Shema, which is pretty much substantively to hear agreeably, such that we come into co-resonation and into harmonizing with that who is casting out his vibratory essence. Very important and very different. So therefore, if God does not demand only strict obedience, but rather the spirit of a kind of special type of listening that is an agreeable listening, he's only calling for you to hear someone, essentially, by the substantive meaning of that word. Now we're getting much closer to what it means to honor someone and to treat them as if they're important. How do you do that? By showing substantively and energetically that you are willing to give them the special type of hearing, such as to show that you treat them with a high regard or heightened level of importance or weight. That's it. He never advocated or commanded tyranny. So if we sweep that away and we rip away from that understanding of the parents are almost to be worshipped despotically, which means worship them as if they are the tyrants, that we must be their obedient slaves almost. Does the Judeo-Christian paradigm as a whole contain anywhere within it the more correct substantive teachings and framings as to what the parent actually is supposed to, how the parent is actually supposed to properly relate relationally to his or her own children, whether young or grown? Let's find out. There may be one source from over 1,000+ years old interpretive source, an interpretive body of works from the Judaic paradigm that correctly instills what it means for parents and children to relate to each other correctly. These matters were clarified more fully there than they were, sadly, anywhere else, as far as we can tell, within the Christian structure in particular, most notably and sadly. That is what allows for eventual twistings and deviations, such as what King James eventually ended up doing with the Bible there, and the further translations that came after that that affected the rest of Europe, such as what the Poles got and their idea of how to twist and corrupt their own societies there, which end up leading to what we have here in present day in our families. No good. Let's discover what we were actually supposed to do all along as mothers for our kids.
The Torah requires an enormous amount of honor from a child to show to a parent. An enormous amount of honor. And any parent who actually exacts that from their child is making a big mistake. It says like this, that a child has to honor their parents, and it gives all these different parameters for what that means. And then in Perek Vav, Halacha Ches, the Rambam says, however, even though it's true that the obligation to honor the parents is upon the children, and it's a massive obligation, nevertheless, from the parent's perspective, the Rambam gives a little advice. It's more than advice. Mishnah Torah is not advice, it's halacha. The Rambam paskins, that means he tells you the rule. Osir is the lashon there. Osir means forbidden. Upon whom? On the parent. Lahachbid olav, to make a heavy burden on their child. That doesn't negate the fact that technically on paper it's true. The parent on paper is entitled to certain treatment. That's the mitzvah. Nevertheless, says the Rambam, osir lahachbid olav al bonov, it is forbidden to, actually, the lahachbid uloi al bonov, it is forbidden to put a heavy yoke, like an animal, like a beast of burden, has a yoke on his back. It's forbidden for the parent to put a heavy yoke on his children, uledaktik b'chavaydai, and to be meticulous, to be exacting about expecting the honor. That the child is, we're not negating the fact the child is obligated to give that honor, but from the perspective of the parent should not be medactic, should not be overly meticulous to demand that honor. Why not? He gives a reason. Shelo yaviyam lidei michshol, that he shouldn't cause the child to stumble. In other words, you're setting him up to fail. Ella, rather, what should you do? Yimchol, he should forego. He should be mavater. He should fargin. He should let it go. V'yisalem, you know what that means? Mach sich nicht wissendig. Pretend you don't know. Turn a blind eye. Ignore. Ignore. You didn't hear it. You didn't hear the insult. Sheho'av shemochel al kavede, because a father and also a mother who forgoes the honor that is due to them, and the honor is due to them. Kvede machol. The honor is officially, he lets it go. He lets it slide. So here's, if you want to hear the whole speech, the 2-minute version. Here's the 2-minute version. Somebody said to me recently, he heard a different talk that I gave about parenting. He says, you know, it's very nice how you stand up for the kids. The kids need to be understood. They need compassion. They need empathy. What about the parents? What about the parents? I also, you know, a little empathy for me. So I told the guy, you heard my talk, right? He says, yeah, I heard it. I said, how many teenagers do you think heard my talk? I can tell you something. I teach in seminary. I'm not sure why I do. Those are even like not even teenagers. There's like post teenagers. They don't listen to me. If I had a teen following, maybe I would speak to the teen perspective and I would tell them about their side of the deal. But if I'm talking among us adults, us parents, what's it going to help if I rile you all up and I tell you, you think your kid is chutzpahdik? Oh, it's worse than you think. You think he's obligated to this level? Oh no, he's even more obligated. And the fact that he doesn't do it, it's even more of an affront than you realized. So what good is that going to do? I'm talking to us parents, and from our perspective, what's our job is to find it in our heart to be as compassionate and gentle with our children as possible. And does that mean that you're not going to get the enormous amount of honor due to you according to Torah? Yeah, that's exactly what it means. You're going to forego that. But you know what they say? You want to be right, or do you want to be happy? Look what it says. Look what you're supposed to do. And you may be well within your rights. On paper, it may be true, but it doesn't bode well for a relationship with a human being. People don't tend to like that kind of treatment. So, again, I'm not trying to humanize Yosef's story. I can't psychologically analyze the Oves, but I'm just saying, if I were to try to put myself in that position and try to relate to that feeling of being a totally destabilized, broken, downtrodden young person who's totally disconnected from anything that he's ever known, full of pain. I mean, your brothers tried to kill you. They turned on you. They hated you to that degree. You're the lowest level of society. All of a sudden you're being exposed to all this stuff, this confusing stuff, and then you have an opportunity for some type of comfort or distraction.
And on that day of October 9th, when my own mom, once again, for improper cause and reason, decided to call the police and then further aided them illegally into entering this apartment in a way that was, as clearly discussed before within this set of videos of ours, was unlawful and essentially illegal. The police then furthermore themselves, very arguably, pretty much also completely illegally, as can be shown by the facts, subsequently put me into restraints and proceeded without making any determination that are of the type that are required by law within statute. So, very funny. More free passes practically by God to just make lawsuits here and there and anywhere. You people do this to yourselves. Okay? But from there on out, let's track what my mother's role specifically was to see whether she is the godly mother inherently or the opposite type. Let's see. This first part is the narrative presented by the EMS personnel that arrived on the scene that particular day. We're going to take a look at what they wrote and see how accurate it is, and furthermore, we're going to scrutinize what my mother was saying. It starts, upon on-scene arrival, patient was in apartment of his alone. This is correct. But it continues, as per the mother, the patient had been making noise, that's correct, and threatening to hurt mother. This is not true. But that's what the mother said. As per the mother, the patient was threatening to hurt her, and that is what prompted her to call EMS for her safety. I wasn't being a direct or indirect threat to her safety by yelling on the phone and yelling in my apartment while I'm alone, while I'm talking to her over the phone. Nor did I make anything that could reasonably be construed as a threat, nor even fairly or neutrally be considered as a threat by even a semblance of an opinion that would be a reasonable opinion. Absolutely not so. So right over there we have the narrative twist. You see, if she wants to call the police, well, she'll just make up and put a little bit of extra of her slant and a little bit of her own extra spin on it to, the narrative is flexible, okay? The facts are not facts in stone. She can play Legos with the facts in any way she wants to make up. Ah, that's the kind of person it looks like we're dealing with, huh? You know what's funny? That type of characteristic, it exists not only within her. I see so many of you people are the same way, and it's peppered everywhere. We may even see an example of this as we read further. We continue. It says, mother states she is scared that patient will hurt others if he isn't evaluated. Wow. This legally prompts them to move. Number one, the actual legal standard is is there a reasonable cause to believe that the patient or person or suspect is a substantial risk to give serious physical injury onto others. Based on what evidence? One simply saying they feel scared, saying, oh, it's my opinion that he might hurt others. That's speculation. But clearly it's so. So if they acted based on that one sentence alone, everybody's going to court and everybody's going to have to be forcibly having to pay. It's just that easy. You people do this to yourselves. But it continues on. Let's check out some of the more aspects of lying. Next sentence says, patient opened the door due to NYPD involvement. This is not correct. I distinctly did not open my door. My mother came in and used her set of keys that I lent her conditionally for limited use. She invented in her mind a way to make it translate over and just decided to, without asking me, she decided to open my door for me without my permission, illegally. Yeah, because she says it's an emergency. There was no emergency. She can make it an emergency and then use that to do what she wants. Override power, you see? That's only what psychotic cluster B types do. Furthermore, it's not true that I opened the door due to NYPD involvement, but the EMS should have witnessed that fact. Already we see some interesting things. The very next statement also says, patient initially stated he did not want to go to hospital. That's correct. But then it says, patient later changed his mind and came to the hospital. That's not correct. It then says patient was put in restraints. Yeah. At no point did I ever indicate that I wanted to go. Another strange people read this stuff like it's a correct narrative of what really happened. You will never understand what really happened unless you speak to the person himself. How far the two narratives diverge is crazy. What people are guilty of in writing the lie. You have to go to what the person says, and his word is more true. Whew. Crazy world. We move on. So what kind of freaking sick mother do I really have, huh? This part is taken directly from the medical record, where the actual medical staff and personnel, doctors and nurses, are the ones putting these entries in. So they write in one of the notes. The mom called in. She states, he is threatening her? Not true. That's a lie. That's false information. And then it furthermore says, and also, she states that he's not making sense when speaking to her. This also is not true. Furthermore, neither she herself nor any other human being that I've ever dealt with, interacted with, or spoken to in my life has ever accused me of not making sense when I'm speaking to them. So what the hell is this magical invention? Yet, the doctor saying here, or the nurse, whoever wrote this, isn't saying they're making this up. They're saying this is what she said. She told them he's not making sense when speaking to her. So she did make this up then. It so appears. They provide her name here, and then it continues on. I called the Psych ED residents, whoever wrote this, the author of this note, to call the patient's mother, and they agreed. This was all while I was in the initial Psych ER evaluation phase. And it furthermore states, Mom states she is concerned as if he doesn't get help. And then they use quotation marks here, which, as it's supposed to be, this means that this is what the person that they're quoting said verbatim, word for word. Now, mind you, I've been quoted saying things purportedly that I didn't actually say. So I've seen such staff actually abuse the quotation system by putting something in quotes, and then they made up still their own slant and paraphrasing. You're not supposed to put quotes and then paraphrase. Either you're paraphrasing, then that's the content of your notes, or you're using quotes because it's a direct statement and your memory works. But regardless, we'll presume it's correct unless or until we have someone else stating otherwise. It appears that she's quoted there by saying directly, he will probably kill me. She isn't saying he might kill me. He will probably kill me. Or burn the house down, meaning the whole building. Funny that she says this, because I've never in my life ever told her that I was going to burn the house down. Nor have I, and this is far in excess of 6 months, and at the worst of times, a further narrative, close examination would be required to uncover the details there. Let's just look at what's medically relevant here, which is, of course, as a standard industry practice, 6 months. Let's look at the 6-month period preceding this date of October 9th. Between April 9th and October 9th, how many times did I show conduct suggesting that I was even a substantial risk of probably killing my mom? The answer is 0. Okay. So if it's 0, and if I've never been demonstrated making true threats or credible threats of making a genuine attempt on her life, which I haven't, Then what is this based on? Is the same thing. It's just as false and invented as when she told one of my old previous lawyers he punched holes into the wall where there were no holes punched into the wall. Do you understand now the level we're operating at? But because she does this, my life gets artificially hampered in a way that's not proper by the actual merits of the situation. The narrative continues. Patient's mom called NYPD. Patient needs psych evaluation. Already the slant begins. We decide he needs it. It goes on to say, she is afraid he is a harm to himself. First of all, is her being afraid a reasonable fear? So first you have to check whether it's based on facts such that any reasonable person in her position would also similarly be afraid, and that's a vital component of the legal standard here. They don't do that. They just check to see whether she expresses it. And then it could be completely unreasonable half the time because the world is so erroneous in its ways today. That's enough. If she says she's afraid, then we just assume it's because he did something wrong. No. So furthermore, before she was claiming that falsely that I was a harm to her. Now it's she is afraid he's a harm also to himself and to her. Wow. And also he has been acting out violent. Anthony stood with me at the second meeting we all had together and clarified for her. This is not violent. You can't use the word violent onto him. That's wrong. It's false representation. It's slander. You can't do that. Meanwhile, they're observing the patient's actually calm here in triage. He's denying any such thing. So what the hell are you sick people doing, you evil people who will get what you deserve? I hope and pray. We continue here. First of all, up it says trauma history denies any childhood sexual, physical, or emotional abuse. They never asked me outright specifically for all these three categories for me to say. If they actually, so again, it's more misrepresentation, more just funny filling in the gaps in their own blind way, doing whatever they want. There's so many errors here. Every single time I ended up in one of these situations, it was worse and worse, the standard of care at which they operate. Absolutely. Unbelievable. I'm sitting on such a powerful pile of law claims, you people can't even, your minds would blow. It's not a joke. It continues. Anyway, if they actually asked me, I would have told them, yes, I was subject to emotional abuse. My mother. And then I would have opened up about it clearly. No such opportunity was afforded me, yet they falsely conclude here. Anyway, they continue. Per the collateral obtained in the emergency department, quote, spoke with the patient's mother. He became extremely angry. Yes, this is true. Next, throwing things. Technically, I didn't literally throw any single thing. But if she's not in my apartment, how can she reasonably characterize something I'm doing as throwing just because she's hearing generalized sounds? So again, more filling in the blanks wrongly. She continues on, yelling and screaming. That's correct. But then what happens? He has, and then quoting her, severe disorder. Really? What disorder? So this is not what's considered legally to be a privileged communication. If she's saying something here about me that's not false, where the basis of that is used to confine me, guess who's legally responsible? You know what's funny? She actually already got sued for essentially doing the same thing in 2017. So when you got served with court papers and you had to deal with the frustration and the expensive cost of hiring a lawyer, and extremely luckily she got out of that only because of a poorly legally interpreted technicality that, even on the merits, there's legal debate as to whether or not that was ruled correctly, but for whatever reason, then that just by the skin of her teeth, she escaped out of that one. Why would she risk doing it again? Now you've just gotten yourself back into the same problem again. It continues on. Believing that he has holes in his brain. And his GI tract. I never said I had holes in my scrotum. That's a misinterpretation. Nor did I say I have literally holes in my brain. As for whether there are tears in the GI tract and parts of the GI tract at the throat that would cause the cranial cavity to be opened up, it's funny. When I provide close to 100 recent pages of material typed up that I've posted online and sent to people and posted about at Craigslist, I've had people with degrees writing back with backgrounds in psychology who came out to me saying, listen, I just want to let you know and reach out to you and saying, I believe your story. It goes on to say he had a brain MRI which was normal. Excuse me. What's the test sensitivity and test specificity for MRI? Oh, if it's rated as low as 60 to 70%, does that mean that by definition 30% of all MRIs necessarily, because the MRI machine is not God, it will falsely produce a false indication of negative finding, where later a second scan or some other intervention finds that it's actually something's wrong? So one brain MRI that was improperly done because the settings weren't the correct ones that were ordered by the doctor doesn't mean that there's no problem there. So you see the falseness of the situation? Obviously. He has also gone for multiple GI workups, which were all negative. False negatives. But one of them, which was the thorax issue, I have visual proof, and I've been posting about it and showing it online. He is very preoccupied with his organs and his various holes and leaks. You would be too if you were dealing with something similar or had reasonable cause to suspect such a thing is legitimate. It goes on. He believes he has hepatic encephalopathy. That's funny. Because a list of 25 consistent symptoms all aligning with hepatic encephalopathy has already been prepared by me over the course of years, which this you cannot statistically deny. Actually, there should be about 28 by now. Where furthermore, a real-life doctor already examining the case furthermore offered her proper medical opinion saying, it plainly does appear to me to be a case of covert hepatic encephalopathy. Look at that. And furthermore, going back for a second regarding holes in various places of the GI tract, for example, the esophagus, I recall when I first experienced the very apparent esophageal tear, I didn't have any structural, radically abnormal asymmetries with my rib cage, torso, and chest. All of a sudden, I go, oh no, I feel a tore in my esophagus. And then I'll eat the food, and then I say, I feel the food splitting out to the left, filling into the left part of my rib cage. That was at the word go. Then half of people believed me, half of people were the less intelligent, like my mom, rolling her eyes. And then afterwards, because there kept being so much food packing into my rib cage, over the course of about 4 to 6 weeks, my left rib cage started growing as if it was a football, and then I took fucking pictures and videos of it, and have the videos in my possession. I've been showing people. It's live. Where I'm showing it, I showed it to Sarah. I literally opened up the video for her. I'm like, Sarah, look at what happened when this was at the worst. Because she didn't know me back then. She looked at it. She was like, oh my God. What the hell? You look like you're pregnant in your rib cage only on one side. How's that possible? I've never seen anything like that. I'm like, I know. And then before that happened was when I was saying, yeah, I have food going into my rib cage now. You can't fake that second part of me actually growing the enmassment. and having the food emboli develop there. I'm not secretly going and installing with invisible surgical incisions actual mass to falsely grow my thing like an advanced trick. I'm not that way. That's impossible, actually. No, it's that everyone got to watch it happen, and then they just go, oh, that's funny, with no ability to cross-connect what the fuck is going on. Huh? What's your last explanation? Just, oh, that was only just the most amazing coincidence in the world. He happened to say that he believed there was a tear. And then, just by coincidence, even though there was no tear, he still suddenly got a massively growing right side thorax, exactly in the place where he happened to believe that there was mass going into. How did that happen? Not even what they call the what's that effect? The placebo. No, you can't make a placebo effect to falsely grow your body, huh? That doesn't work that way. That's not scientific. It was giant. It was like the size of a fist or more's worth of extra enmassment at the lower part of the ribcage, jutting out. One person I think just suggests, "Oh, maybe is that your stomach?" No, stupid. Stomachs don't do that. Oh, isn't the stomach on the left side? I might have even possibly been someone who took too many shots, but they might have even been a doctor. No, stupid. No matter how much of a meal you eat today, you're not going to be preferentially larger at your rib cage, because guess what? Your stomach's below your diaphragm, idiot, and not above it, which makes a completely different dynamic of how that packs in and how that's shaped like. Duh. You people are retarded. You've been watching someone deal with all the issues now? And yet you still act stupid, exactly like this. Resuming. So believes he has hepatic encephalopathy. Yeah, based on reasonable cause to believe, understand, or suspect the thing. Not unreasonably. Remember, the definition of a delusional disorder is, by definition, quote, something that's ununderstandable. If I feel a tear in my esophagus, because of medical preconditions that also by logic happen to add up and support this story by connection. Hepatic encephalopathy means I'm not breaking down any substances, including drugs. If I took cocaine once, and then I'm also radically not breaking down any substances because of the hepatic encephalopathy caused by the GABA B upregulation, which is documented, which is the same one that's causing the lowered respiratory rate that we do all see, which we know no other human being you've ever met breathes this slowly. Therefore, of course, the cocaine would stay. Where also, when you then look in the literature, you see that wherever cocaine remains in tissue, it immediately causes it to tear. No wonder exactly the week I took the cocaine was the week I started saying, why do I feel places all along my GI tract suddenly tearing? Never before that did that happen. So what do you think? One night of cocaine use doesn't make any person suddenly become crazy. But if they didn't break down things, then loading the cocaine into the body, like the other things, will make it, what? Stay in the body, and then you're really fucked. So it's all self-validating, because it all rests on itself and each other to be valid, and it's all cross-validating. Grow a brain, you idiots. But he or she thinks she's so smart. Always the stupidest people are the ones think that they're the smartest. It's unbelievable. So you did this to yourselves, the shame you live under. It continues. He thinks he is not getting correct care. That much is true, although the context is key. What's being meant by that? Be careful, and who knows? But, And it continues on to say, but states that, this is her own idea, states that he may have schizophrenia. That's amazing. Apparently, the one doctor that she spoke to during my first hospitalization, this was right after I got the research chemical-induced coma, I went in for a voluntary admission just to go along with whatever they recommended, because I said, why not? Even though they misdiagnosed me with various things already by that point. One of the doctors, who was not my personal doctor, who was not personally examining me, but was only, he didn't understand or see me once directly. He was the one who spoke with my mother. He didn't know me, my case personally from direct interaction. I never spoke to him directly in that way. So he just simply flipped through a folder, reviewed somebody else's files, and then kind of said, oh yeah, we believe that we have in our differential diagnosis, he may have bipolar or schizophrenia. Yeah, except when you look at the actual medical record, which was being compiled by the actual people who were directly examining me, at no point in time did they actually hold this to be true. They ruled out bipolar and never once mentioned schizophrenia. It wasn't even considerable and was nowhere within the narrative. But a stupid woman, all she does is hear something, and then the discharge diagnoses from that stay were completely not consistent with either of them. Both of those were completely absent. It never ended. After that, only one man needed to tell her, who had no idea what the actual case was, and then she worships this as her new dogma. He has schizophrenia. He has schizophrenia. That's what they told me. No, stupid. That's what you told yourself. Even though you've been told many times, and with good reason, as has again been indicated now, is not true. And furthermore, those professionals they're so extremely irresponsible. Hugely. So yet, even though we don't have let me tell you something. You can't legally attribute someone with a condition. You can only legally attribute someone with symptoms. You're not a doctor. So when you suggest to someone that I may have schizophrenia, unless you have reasonable cause to suspect such a thing, there's another legal count for which someone would have to pay for that representation, is what directly contributed to the fact that I lost a week of my freedom of movement in my life, which comes at a very high price. You want to find out what the legal standard is for being responsible for someone's freedom being taken away for 24 hours? 5 figures. You have the money to pay? Yet you faced some aspect of this danger before, and then you luckily got out of it. Just God gave you a chance, but you blew it. You did it again. You will have to pay, simply. There's no way with you except for you to learn the hard way, because you keep asking for it this way through your conduct. Stupidly. It continues. Family had multiple orders of protection. That's half true, half false, and regardless, both of those were dismissed on the merits, in fact. One of those certainly was never valid on the merits to begin with, but would have deserved a countersuit for abuse of process. But you see how the narrative gets spun? If you just say, family had orders of protection, makes it sound and imbues it with, oh, those were fully legitimate. That means there was a reason to have those there, which is the implied fault from the person we're dealing with now, right? Because he is violent and does threaten to kill others. Really? Violent? From a purely medical perspective, with regards to what their interest is, legally speaking, plain off the bat, the standard is, if some issue of controversy happened over 6 months ago, but then the last 6 months have been clear of the particular issue, symptom, or complaint, you cannot, by law or by medical standard, consider the thing as an active condition or threat or problem such that they're entitled to deal with it at that point in time. Yet she's recounting stories from years ago where they rely on these things to do something about me there on that spot within October of that year? No. It gets even worse. It continues to say, well, keep in mind that it just says, everyone in the apartment building, is the next page, are afraid of him. Whether or not this happens to be true, here's a much more contextually relevant and prevalent question to bring up here. What kind of mother is saying that to anyone about her own son or child willingly? Is this in the correct spirit of the overall tone in which you're supposed to be treating your child with? Within this whole greater video that you're apparently supposed to be watching and understanding here? And then furthermore, she goes on, not only is everyone in the building afraid of him, why? Where did you get this? Who told you that? How did you come to this? This is a conclusory statement. What facts is that based on? Is it because I made it up? Or is it because something happened concrete that you could describe that points out facts? I don't see any facts here. And then it continues on and says, and they run across the street away from him. Huh. They run across the street away from him. How would my mother know that? Because of all the times in my life that I was walking with her, that she was with me and we're walking in or out of the building and down, I've got extremely good eyes. I'm talking, but I see and perceive everything that's going on around me clearly. There's not one time where we had someone move here, move there, and then they, in a way that's clearly abnormal, they go and they cross the street just so they could avoid who? Is it me or even my mother? You'll never know. And then if she wasn't talking about something straight that she witnessed on hand, then the other question is, how would she know? No one's telling her and talking to her like, hey, like we're crossing the street when we see your son. That definitely doesn't happen. Almost definitely. It's borderline implausible in realistically speaking. So she's just, this is her design. She wants to make this slant. This is as true as he's punching holes in the walls when that never happened. And he's violent when that never happened. He's threatening to hurt me or kill me today. That never happened. It's the same spin. They moved across the street from him. No, I think you have a fucking apparent serious problem that you need to go deal with based on these very clear symptoms. Because the things that they're being represented are, in their substantive nature, as far as I can say with veracity, delusional or borderline delusional. She continues, she financially supports him. Not untrue. He has a serious OD on a Russian drug in 2015. They got the year wrong, but it's essentially true. He was in a coma. That's right. She, and look at this interesting line here. She has no idea if he has been using any drugs. Let me tell you something. We already mentioned this story, so I'm not going to get into it deeply again, but there was already one particular point in time where there was another shorter lasting estrangement that happened for about a few weeks worth of time, about a year prior to when this here happened. Sarah, when she was in my life, she became involved, and she was on my side, and she called up my mother, and she's talking to her. I'm sitting there in the same room, but she's having a direct phone conversation with my mother. And then, but I could hear what's going on. My room was quiet. I heard both of what was happening. And they're talking. Sarah was right. She was just saying, "Listen, Barbara, you got to reconsider how you're doing this. This is the way you're treating your son is the thing that's not right. But that's the thing you owe. It's how you're treating your son. So that's why what you're doing is wrong." And then out of nowhere, she goes, "He is on drugs. Tell me that he is on drugs. You know he is on drugs." And which I wasn't at that time at all. And she knew that. And she's like, "What the fuck?" And she's like, "He's not on drugs." And she like, again, the more crazy the things you say are, the less serious people take you, because the more mind-blowingly crazy, but also, the more mind-blowing it is for you to say that, but also the more insulting it is for you to try to have someone else believe your craziness. So with Sarah, who knew, and me also who knew, I'm like, oh my God. I'm not like Jeffrey Winslow, okay? When I'm doing drugs or doing anything, especially post my research chemical-induced coma, people around me who grew up with me told me my personality changed, number one. But number two, I don't hide anything. I'm actually extremely fucking open. Many times I'd come back and be like, "Oh yeah, I took LSD, and I've got LSD tracers lasting. Wow. Oh, I took cocaine this week. Yeah, I was just telling my mom openly. I don't care what you people think, you fucking idiots. The problem is, but this is actually a blessing in disguise. I have absolutely no interest in drugs anymore. It doesn't matter. If I was a different person and I was doing drugs, still it should, fuck you. It's my business. You understand? I happen to choose to be clean, number one, because of me. Number two, as a practical matter, what got me here, hepatic encephalopathy. Because when I take anything, instead of lasting for an hour, it lasts for 12 months. So I'm not interested in that. Do you see the trap there? So actually, because of that, I ended up becoming completely sober. And then it benefited the quality of my life. And I actually love it now. So I always keep sober. My only drug is coffee, which makes a lot of problems for me too. But here's the thing. When this happened, Sarah clearly told her, and she had reasonable information and belief, he doesn't do drugs. And also, I, at some point, directly addressed my mom not long thereafter, affirming and saying, lady, I don't do drugs. Okay? First of all, it's not strictly your business, number one. Number two, if I did, I'd probably be just sharing it with you ordinarily because I don't give a shit what you fucking think. But those two things aside, I genuinely really don't happen to be doing any drugs. That statement of mine to you constitutes some form of indication or evidence. Generally, when someone tells you anything, it counts as something. If I tell you, you should be worshiping it. The things I say have a particularly high and firm value. So look at how you regard your son. Later on, you're talking over the phone with someone. You have no personal clue. So what do you say? I have no idea if he's been using any drugs. No. Actually, that's a lie. You do have an idea. The idea is the one you derived from me, or were supposed to derive when I indicated to you whether or not I was, where I said clearly I'm not. So that's the end of the story. So if you really wanted to answer or bring up the subject matter honestly in such a conversation, you would say, I have no idea whether my son's doing any drugs based on the evidence, but he's assured me that he doesn't. So now that constitutes the entirety of everything that I come to understand. Huh? No, instead it becomes, she has no idea if he's been using any drugs, as if to say, look, he could be on drugs. No, that it's just as likely that I can be as if I'm not. So that's false. So this is more trying to warp and spin things. It's very disingenuous and therefore disgusting for that reason. But it gets even worse. The next statement. Yesterday, and this is even worse. You thought all this stuff was crazy. All the other stuff here that we've covered that I said was a lie or just outright false was an outright lie or outright false. But it pales in comparison to what comes next. If you could, even the other stuff, it's wrong, but if you're like really stupid and have some fundamental defect of mind, it's possible that you can still kind of sort of believe some of the other stuff if you're just fucked up in the head. But this thing coming up here is impossible to attribute anything except this is actually a real genuine delusion. This is a real genuine delusional belief. Like a full one. The other one's like, 50-50. It's like maybe it's borderline delusional, but borderline you're just really uninsightful and stupid and naive and dumb. Here's where it gets worse. Yesterday, which first of all, that's not true either. I hadn't seen her I actually never saw her that day, nor the 8 days prior to that. So actually I hadn't interacted with her in person in 8 days, but somehow it became yesterday. Maybe the person who was listening to the phone call misheard. So, whether it was yesterday or whether, although in my mind, I believe I understand what particular incident she's referring to. That was a night, an evening in Manhattan that was about maybe a few weeks or several weeks prior to this particular instance. Might have been up to even 2 months or so, somewhere between a few weeks and a couple months or so prior to this. Let's just say that that's what it is. So around then, comma, he attempted to walk into traffic in Manhattan. All right? By that word, what are you imagining someone doing? Suicidally going, oh, I hate my life. I'm going to run into traffic. Because that's the fair import of these words when you convey this. You see the problem here? So we'll say the whole thing, and then we'll reanalyze what actually happened, and therefore how ridiculous the slant is and who ought to take responsibility for it. We'll see if she ever does. The whole problem in my life is mother does something stupid or says something stupid, causes a negative effect, but then stands there and takes absolutely no responsibility for the negative effect she caused that I didn't deserve. Ah, so that's the lifelong repeating problems cycle. All right, and all that dynamic mixed in with the fact that she genuinely, inherently does not pick up or construct an accurate factual framework of what really is happening in the world around her. Okay? I have serious damn medical issues in her mind. It could be made up. He's schizophrenic. But then everything else. She's sitting in a second meeting with me and Anthony. We're near a highway. Down the highway it goes, and then we have one of those, nitrous boost or whatever other type of cars, and there's like a misfiring. When the misfire goes from the tailpipe, it's a misfire, but you know what I mean. From the cars is driving along. She hears that and then turns and goes, "Oh, was that an accident?" Okay? No one in the planet would hear the clear sound of the misfiring sound that comes out from the motor in the tailpipe and think that that was a car accident or even a likely car accident. You're on another planet. You're not. This is not Earth. I don't know what the fuck it is. You're on another dimension. Okay? Is the same alternate dimension that she's speaking from when she says this. He attempted to walk into traffic in Manhattan, and if she wasn't there, she believes he would have been hit. What? Furthermore, and it's amazing, and by the way, if she wasn't there, so she actually saved me from what? From when I attempted to walk into traffic? Holy shit. What a fucking mind job and what a fucking turn of the narrative and the story. Okay, let's clear it up and actually paint this picture correctly. What the hell happened? What is she referring to? And then let's find out in that context whether this kind of representation is reasonable. To note, ever since my coma and reawakening, one of the interesting habits that I took on is that unlike most people who stay on the sidewalk, how sometimes people on the sidewalk, most of you guys, you sheep, you herds, 5 or so percent of you, 96, 97% of you will stay on the sidewalk. And every now and then, if you look out, you'll kind of see someone who tends to just walk down the street, but they're in the street as they're walking. All right? You'll see that from time to time, and then you don't really think much about it. Okay. There's a small group of people where we routinely, it's in our nature, we want to walk as if we are like the parade. Or we think, not like we think we're cars, but we just feel naturally more comfortable literally walking down the side, over on one side, but on the street, not on the sidewalk. I like it. I've been doing this regularly for years. It's just where I feel more comfortably placed. I don't know. My aura is just much wider and fatter. I feel better when I'm in the street because I feel like this is better. Personal choice. Okay? I've never been in a situation where it was because of exactly my such traveling down the road, once I'm on the road in that normal way, that I'm getting hit by a car. Okay? The cars and me don't collide for very good reason. It's because we're running along in the same way generally, or otherwise staying on different paths. Okay? But anyway, so fast forward to one particular night where my mom sees me. Now, I've had a lot of coffee. When the coffee's running, it has this effect of just making me have these nerve issues where I have them. It exacerbates them a lot. Many other people have seen this fact about me, particularly Sarah, who's very close to me for a while. And Anthony even has seen some of this too. Others as well. Katya used to also. As a result of this, yes, sometimes I have a little bit of movement problem. It looks like my walking isn't so good. It's actually gotten a little bit better now. I'm having less issues with this than I had with it 3-4 years ago, and less than I had even 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. It's interesting. I'm happy about that part. This is still not perfect. It's still intermittent, but it's just less frequent now. Good for me. My mom came and she saw me, but I was so, because I had like 2.5 coffees, which for a normal person's fine. But because of me, when I swallow it and there's a hole in my throat and I could feel it pumping into my skull and weighing the back of my skull down with the cold fluid that just went in there, it's up there, and then it has direct contact with the brain tissue, guess what? No wonder I start looking like a monster. Caffeine directly injected into your brain tissue practically. Literally, just about. So then what? I meet up with her. And she's like, oh my God, what's wrong? And I'm saying, yeah, I drank a lot of coffee and I'm having the neural issue. So both combined, it looks like a nightmare, but not really. She's trying to like hold me, push me, walk me, press me to move on further. And I'm like, don't even bother. It looks bad, but I'm better in control of my balance if you don't fucking touch me than if you try to like move me or hold me up or any weird thing like that. I said that to her multiple times. She still keeps trying to like press that. No one else would do this. Anyone else around me knows to like let me be, or they'll comfortably hold me in a way that works with my flow. My mom has no ability to do this. In fact, it's like her personality is the same way that she handles you physically. It's so fucking weird. She just doesn't have the right programming. So I told her multiple times, let go of me. I'm all right. And then we're walking here, we're walking there. And then, I step out into the street for a moment because out of instinct, I'm like, this is where I'm more comfortable. I literally just want to walk down the street, like on the other side of where the parked cars are. That thin lane between that and where the actual cars are driving is where I like to be. And I walk there. So I simply stepped out a couple feet. And then she literally goes, I remember this. She goes, oh no, what are you doing? No, that's the street. This car is gonna get hit. No. And she like jumps out, tries to fuck a and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, the street, the cars, no. And I'm like, no. What are you talking about? There weren't even cars nearby. Or if there were nearby, not even close enough to bother me or alarm me. And I don't have an issue with the judgment on how close or not close to be. All right. Then her reaction happened. Then I just explained to her, I'm like, lady, chill. This is fine. Whatever. Where are we going now? We're going home here somewhere? Blah, blah, blah. She didn't adjust me. She didn't move me somewhere. If she tried to, I said, stop it. I'm exactly fine where I am. I ended up later, we just went home. That was the only time that whole season, summer, a year, or anything, that any similar situation like that. Fast forward to October. Yesterday, he attempted to walk into traffic. If I wasn't there, I think he would have been hit. Not again. Not another vomiting, nauseating, it's like a deep spin. A little spin is something in life. People do that too. It's not great. Little spins are the most effective because they're still kind of mostly believable, even when you apply the best contexts. They're only a little bit off, so the little bit added up gets the other person their little slick way, but still they can't ever be called out so strictly for being so far off the mark. The thing that's ugly with my mom is she's so massively off the mark that it's easy to just call out and say, no, this is disgusting. That's just hugely untrue. And that other one, that's also hugely untrue. And then the other one, that too, boo, on and on. So again, unbelievable. I don't even know what to say about this. No, there's no such the implicit narrative is that he's trying to hurt himself or that he's reckless. Both of those are false completely in actual reality and substance. Definitely neither the former, and definitely neither the case that I'm reckless in how I'm walking down the street. This never happened. My God. Huh. I ended up actually getting hit by a car and ending up in the hospital a few months ago. Funny enough. You know what it took for that to happen? I actually lost consciousness and fainted in the street after breaking a bone while on the sidewalk where something fell on my foot. Completely unrelated to being in the street. The last thing I remember is me still standing on the sidewalk. Then there's a couple moments I must have stumbled out, and right there I got hit by a taxi. I have no memory of that. Okay? Unless it's a genuine emergency and something genuinely remarkable with other like extenuating circumstances, unusual, multiple other variables and factors that turn the situation in a totally different direction, it's fine. Don't make up something that's not there. That's bad for your karma. You see? So it's good to be exposing your stupid ass now. Because you're responsible for all this horrible shit. What the hell is this shit? And then next, it continues. He has been threatening to kill his mom and her boyfriend. When did once in my life I tell her boyfriend that I was going to kill him? When did I ever make any true or genuine threat that goes past... Oh, I already covered this in earlier videos. I just remembered. All right. So I don't need to go into deep detail about this. When did I ever make a threat that wasn't the colloquial English idiom like, I'm going to kill you, which means, I'm pissed off at you. And to her Polish mind, that doesn't make sense because maybe there's no such thing as an idiom in Polish. We don't understand. Everything's very literal, like autism. If you said, I'm going to kill you, that means I have to call the police right now, right? Stupid. You're not getting it. My God. It has to be a true threat or a credible threat paired with a genuine plan such that you can hold someone to that account. Again, nonsense. I had no genuine plan to kill anyone. But because I'm working with a stupid woman that I'm dealing with my whole life, stupid woman, this is what I'm saddled with. The ugly twisting of the most delusional type, in my opinion, but almost very apparently so, I would believe, objectively speaking, too. We continue. Here's another one. This one's completely baseless. Completely baseless. I don't even understand. Here I'm thinking there's no way any of this could add up. Here I'm almost like either the writer's in on it. I've seen writers write a lot of borderline fucked up stuff too on their own, where it's clearly them. I can make extremely detailed videos about it where I substantiate and evidence this firmly. So don't take my word for it now. Hang around and ask and you'll find exactly what I mean. But anyway, here we go. I don't know. We'll take it at face value as what it is. Quoting her, she says, he is very paranoid. No, I'm not. I'm exactly the opposite. What the hell is she talking about? What one thing have I ever been like, oh my God, they're going to get me. Who's going to get you? Oh my God, these people are planning against me. I never talk like that. And even if there was any issue, even my personality type is that even if there is a merit issue, I still don't worry about it, and I don't even think about it or talk about anything. I completely just don't address anything. Mind you, there's no issue. It goes on. There's different types of paranoia, but they clarify here. She thinks people are after him. No, I don't. Nor did I ever give any indication of that. Certainly, number one, not within the 6 months immediately preceding this. I'm thinking my whole life over the last, 5 to 7 years, I'm thinking like, when the fuck ever? All right. And to know furthermore, my mom never accused me. She never came to me. She said, John, you seem paranoid. It seems like you're worried that some people are here to get you. No, guys, here's the narrative. I never said that. Furthermore, she never acted as if she was hearing or beholding something like that. So just to say back to me, hey, I think I hear what you're saying. I think, are you paranoid, or do you think someone's after you? None of that. So just you're describing two other people's lives. This is not even a narration of our own lives. Oh my God, the gaslighting here is extreme. Of course, it's not actually being said directly to me. The way she treats me directly is bad enough. Then how she turns to other third parties and talks is even worse. Blah! Fucking may that vomit fucking be on your face forever in your shame. Disgusting. I'm thinking back in my whole life. When's the one time, the closest thing to paranoia I ever considered in my life? Nothing. It's not. But I'm thinking, okay, what would my mom possibly think? I'm thinking back, and I'm like, I think I remember one thing that would stand out as the worst example. So let's compare the worst example, and then compare it in its severity, both in context when it was, what it was dealing with, and let's compare it to the claim she's making now. I remember one time in the year was 2017, okay? This was like a few years before this is 2022 now, okay? 5 years prior, I went out to a nightclub once, ended up having an extremely hostile reaction and interaction with one of the guys that was the security, the bouncer there, which is not a good thing. But I wasn't yet in a great place and still doing fucking probably too much drugs. And drinking too much anyway. Which, by the way, in hindsight, for you idiots that don't know, the alcohol is actually much worse than the drugs. By far. You people can't appreciate that fact. You think drugs is worse? Anybody who's in the deal knows that we all understand. It's funny, alcohol is the legal one, but that one actually has a way worse impact than the drugs. If you did only the drugs, you'd be fine. You don't get it. So, I had a very hostile interaction with them. It was so bad that the guy was basically making like almost implicit threats at the end of the fucking interaction. He was like, yo man, I can't fucking stand you, man. God, if I fucking see you again, wonder where I could find you. Ba-da-da-da. And I'm thinking like, damn, this guy saw my ID and like got a glance at where my address was. He tried to get my ID again so he could have a better look. Crazy shit. Okay? And then funny enough, how life works out, I end up at that club again several months later because I didn't even care about the guy afterwards. I still go back to the same club, even though I'm thinking like, is he there again? Like, I don't even give a shit. I went in. Later, he sees me outside. For whatever reason, all of a sudden, he sees me. I was like drunk and, almost passed out and drunk. And we actually talked a little bit more. All of a sudden, my attitude was different. His was different too. And he like almost apologized to me, and we just like made up. And he was like, listen, man, sorry about last time. Very interesting stuff, okay? But the first time that this happened, that one time was the only time that I got a little bit unnerved. Like, did he actually manage to get a look at that address of mine or not? Because he looked like the type that, the tattoos and him and his friends, and if he felt disrespected enough, he's of the type that him and his gangs would show up at your house and see what's up. Okay? You could read those types well. So, I'm hanging around. About 2-3 days later, I'm hanging around. All of a sudden, someone's like buzzing at the door at like 11 at night, which is not usual for here. All those miss buzzes happen during the day. So it's buzzing at night. Bzz, 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 bzz. And I'm looking outside, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then I'm thinking, shit. I was wondering if that guy did happen to like get my address, because he was acting that way like he would hope that he would figure out how to fucking continue that interaction if he only could get away to, because we were both. I was also being very disrespectful to him. I was provoking it a lot, very heavily. So, I turned to my mom and I'm like, hey, someone's buzzing at the door. And then I also just casually mentioned to her, hey, also, like, I had a crazy bad interaction with some guy who worked security just a couple days ago. And I just said, I wonder if that's him. Because that guy said, he literally said, like, I'm going to fucking try to get you, like if I ever see you around again. And all that, and trying to hint and see if he could figure out how to make that happen in a very overt way. I remember my mom just kind of thinking and just listening, going, and then just, she ran off. And I was like, what the fuck, weird reaction. And right on the spot, I'm like, I bet she thought I was just paranoid or something. But she doesn't understand. I was like, that's not paranoia. I know what the fuck that was. Mind you, nothing like that's ever happened again, even not close to that level. And never have I ever again expressed any kind of paranoia. So, when did I say that was? 2017. Okay, so here I am in late 2022, 60 months later. Are you people mind blown? Just about 60 months later, living my life in the mode that it's in, and my mom comes in, calls these guys, and starts saying, he's paranoid. He thinks people are after him. When? This week? Today? Earlier this month? No. In the last 6 months? No. Ever? No. What facts are these based on? At some point, the staff here has to take responsibility, because if all they're getting is conclusory statements, well, you're about to take someone's liberty away because of conclusory statements, where legally you have an obligation to ask the next round of questions that determines and substantiates what the facts are that substantiate the conclusory statements, because that's where half of those get blown away by their bullshit validity because they're invalid. They crumble to nothing. Why are they not doing their work? You know what this shows to me? It means I could do this to any one of you. Come to my house, have a little argument with me, you're done. I could call the police. I'll just tell them, he tried to kill me. It doesn't have to be true. I'll just say you're threatening me. It doesn't have to be true. They'll believe me because I said it. See how magic that works? Oh, I know it's illegal. I know I could go to jail for that. But it's your word against mine, so I'll never be proven wrong fully unless you had a camera in my face while it was happening. Oh, that's called evil. Then you'll end up in a hospital. I'll call that hospital and I'll tell them, you tried to walk into traffic. Yeah. Also, you're paranoid, yeah. What the fuck, huh? Continues on. He hasn't slept for weeks. Okay, here's the interesting implication. Something that my own previous main doctor, before the one I have now, actually with my mom present too, she was a little more involved then, when this was all new stuff, this post-coma new mode of living and the neural system problems. My mom's trying to talk for me because she has that stupid controlling problem. I said, stop it, you're wrong. She's like, he has insomnia. And then he's smart enough. He goes, huh. He turns to me because he's like, shut up, Barbara. He turns to me and says, John, how many hours a day average of sleep do you get within any given 24-hour period? I say, just about without fail, it's 8 or more. I virtually never short of 8. I usually sleep well beyond 8. Turns back to us both and says, yeah, that's not insomnia. Okay? That's you drinking coffee at night, and so you're staying up late before you go to sleep. And then if you don't use an alarm for sure and you stay asleep 8 hours, that's not indicative of a problem that correlates to insomniatic patterning. Okay? So if you say someone hasn't been getting much sleep, you're trying to say that they're getting well over 16 hours of being awake and well less than 8 hours of a night or a day, it doesn't matter, of sleep. That's incorrect. I always had 16-8 or more. In fact, my problem is that because of my system and the slow respiratory rate and all that, even if I'm drinking coffee, and especially when I stop, or if I had a little too much literally just running around one day, and then I go to sleep and the coffee's wearing off. Because of how dysregulated my system is, I actually sleep more than normal. But you see, if you have inverted vision and thinking, your slant will portray an imaginary monster that looks like it's a condition of less sleep than it's supposed to be. Where actually, I stay asleep for up to 20 hours. No street drugs or hard drugs involved or anything. Just my new normal life patterning. But a normal human being can't naturally stay asleep for more than 10 or 11. Not naturally, not unless they're extremely sick or having external, usually they need to turn to drugs for modulation of the nervous system. I'm living the modulation now. So you people are all reversed. Every single sentence here is like an inversion of reality. These people can't seem to get it. People, I mean my mom, the ones who are responsible for it. The hospital shares some responsibility too because they didn't vet the information. It's an even better case than the previous one I had. And the previous one's amazing. The previous one is I tested high for blood sugar that by the books confirms the presence of diabetes. I simply go to the hospital to let them know I've tested high for blood sugar, and they lock me up for a week and a half, calling me crazy because I'm delusional because I believe I have diabetes. You can't make this shit up. These people throw the fucking red carpets for me to come in and do anything I would do thereafter. Retardation of the system and human beings and their capacity. It's sick. Okay? It continues on. Yeah, I stay up all night. That part is true because I sleep during the day. My choice. That's just a lifestyling pattern. That's not a medical condition. And I choose it because I choose to drink coffee during late hours. When I don't drink coffee, it stabilizes much better, actually, as they found when I was there for the week plus. They found me go to sleep every night and wake up with the sun. Why is that? Because I'm like, I don't have coffee in my system, so it's moving correctly. That's it. You people need to shut the fuck up now because you're not as smart as you think you are. But you should have known that from the beginning. Except, unfortunately, stupid never realizes that stupid is stupid. It says, finally, these symptoms have been present for many years. That should be the first hint that some of the things she's describing aren't recent relevant things. They're just, when he was 5, he did this. Get him. He's 34 now. What the hell you want us to do? That was 30 years ago. It was kind of the same thing. He said something 5 years ago. So? He said something 3 years ago. So? We're here to deal with something that's going on now. And then the maximum far back, 3 to 6 months, depending on what we're dealing with. Okay? And then it's been getting more severe in the past month. What's been getting more severe? The only thing that happened that particular month in October is what? I already described it in detail earlier in this video series, where we simply said she came back from Poland. She was gone for a month or so prior to that. So it was only referring to the prior week. Yeah, it got worse, not because I have a condition of the mind. It got worse because she pissed me off because how she was acting. Where I said, your boyfriend's an idiot. He's not an idiot. And I said, you guys owe me the apology. And then she, instead of giving it, she just walks out and then doesn't talk to me for a week. That angers a man. So there's nothing abnormal about this. Your conduct invited the anger. Stupid. Disgusting. Lastly, she also describes, this one also is pretty bad. She also describes these periods of time where he becomes mute, stiff. Oh, get this. Yeah, it's true. There's a dystonia that sets on. Guess what is not proper to conflate if you're not a doctor, and even if you are? Here's her trying to diagnose things again. Catatonic. You see the association with schizophrenia? So you could call it dystonic. You could call it dyskinesia. Both of those terms would be more apt and correct. Yes, both of those are what happens to me periodically. Very openly and admittedly. Well, you see, if you call it in a certain light that you invent, we could say that's catatonia. Actually, it's not. But if you run down the comparative list of what differentiates catatonia to just ordinary, more broader dyskinesia or dystonia of a person, which we should include for this video, but go look it up yourselves or come talk to me about it, or maybe I will make a video about it. They're two separate things. There's specific factors that differentiate the two, and if you look them up, you'd see I fit distinctly as a dystonic or dyskinesic person, not with catatonia. But if she makes the slant herself and invents the bridge to walk over to catatonia, now she does what? Further supports the false schizophrenic slant. Oh, I have brain damage, not psychiatric conditions. See the difference? Ah, wow. These episodes last for several hours at a time. So all she has to do is take her evil, twisted bullshit and feed it to someone else, and then they believe it because it was presented to them on a silver platter, and they just assume that probably, on average, most people are normal. So because they don't know her from Joe or Jane or anyone else, they assume she's as normal as any other person whose words are normally correct. See, because that's the problem. See, when I'm the only person in this building who gets the police called on them 5-6 times over the last however many years, it's not because I'm that much worse of a person. It's because the one next to me who's doing the calling is that much more irresponsible of a moral upholding and interpersonally interpreting person. You see the problem? But then that feeds a cycle around. And then when your own parents falsely slant you and build you up with this identity, then it does start to uproot you and take you as that. So again, you create the problem you make, because you keep feeding it poison. So you expect the plant to not absorb the poison and become poison itself when you keep putting poison water to be its food? It's disgusting and immorally sick. This is the kind of mother I have. I did nothing wrong morally. I have no condition except for the real conditions I live with. And my acting is not unreasonable given the context that we're living in, plus the trauma that's accrued over my life from the emotional abuse that came from her. But by the false slant, doesn't matter. The false slant continues. So I'm happy to show these things for what they are. Is this in line with correct? Now let's bring this back around. Full context. Is this in line with correct mother's treatment of a child? Or is it disgusting? We go back to the video.
You know, from this you can learn that the greatest power that a parent has in adding to the moral strength of their child is cultivating enough of a connection that when your child thinks of you, that gives them strength. That's something that means something to them. Because otherwise, why would it give him that push? You know, there's a saying in education, which I hate. I don't hate it, but I hate that it's true, which is people, and I'll tell you why I hate that it's true. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. It's totally true, and it's not fair. Because really, as long as I'm saying something true, that should be good enough. But in reality, you can say things that are true, and if people don't think that you're compassionate, if people don't think that you relate to them, if people don't think that you have their best interests at heart, they won't listen to you even though everything you're saying is true. You know that? It's very frustrating. What difference does it make? You know, from this you can learn that the greatest power that a parent has in adding to the moral strength of their child is cultivating enough of a connection that when your child thinks of you, that gives them strength. That's something that means something to them. Because otherwise, why would it give him that push? You know, there's a saying in education, which I hate. I don't hate it, but I hate that it's true, which is people, and I'll tell you why I hate that it's true. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. It's totally true, and it's not fair. Because really, as long as I'm saying something true, that should be good enough. But in reality, you can say things that are true, and if people don't think that you're compassionate, people don't think that you relate to them, if people don't think that you have their best interests at heart, they won't listen to you even though everything you're saying is true. You know that? It's very frustrating. What difference does it make if I'm a nice guy? What difference does it make if I've invested in the relationship? I said something true, you should accept it. And you know what? On paper, that's 100% true. But in reality, human beings don't work that way. Human beings don't work that way. In fact, human beings will take into account more the emotional significance of the relationship than the intelligence of the person who's delivering the message. To the extent that when they feel loved and accepted by somebody, they'll even listen to and believe stupid things that that person tells them. In contrast, somebody can be saying the smartest things in the world, but if you don't feel that they care about you, you dismiss it. It's not fair, but that's human nature. So imagine, again, not to humanize the others, but to put ourselves in that situation so we can learn something from it for ourselves. Imagine you as a father having that power that when your child is in a moment of moral crisis and he has every reason emotionally to not be able to overcome it, that thinking about you is what strengthens him to be able to overcome. That didn't come out of nowhere. That must mean that there's a lot of currency in that relationship. And that currency must have come through investing time and effort, and it was conversations that you had, and it was experiences that you shared. Otherwise, out of the blue, it's not going to make a difference. Maybe even to the contrary. Oh, there's that judgmental jerk here to guilt me. I'll show you how bad I am. The way we look at our children gives them a self-concept which they bring with them even when we're not there to tell them the right thing to do. Yosef was far away from his father, but his father had implanted within him a self-concept. Think about how powerful that is, to teach somebody how to have an accurate opinion of their own greatness. Because when you teach somebody who they are, when you literally give somebody their identity in a positive way, you gave them their identity? That's huge. You told someone who they are? There's a saying, wherever you go, there you are. So think about it. Wherever you go, there you are. You bring you with you, for better or for worse. If a parent taught you that what you are is strong and good and capable, you bring that with you into all of the situations of life, into every challenge. So, let's go back to where we started from. Our children are obligated, according to the Torah, to honor us. No question. The question is, why should I care? Why is that significant to me? Because I don't want unruly children who are disrespectful, and I want them to treat me properly. That's the game plan. You don't want to be, I don't know how to say this without sounding cynical, but who in the world signs up for parenthood thinking that, well, it's a good thing we're religious Jews because my child will be obligated to honor me, and then parenting will be so pleasurable. It'll be a really great way to get some honor. Okay, I don't think anyone has ever been that deluded to say, honey, I got an idea how we could get a lot of honor. Let's have a bunch of kids, And then we'll tell them what it says in Shulchan Aruch, how they're obligated to honor us. It's one of the 10 Commandments. And if they don't remember, we'll remind them. And then we're going to get a lot of honor, and life's going to be really pleasurable and sweet. Yeah. Okay. So I don't think anyone's deluded enough to think that that's a good plan. Yeah. Why does it matter that my child is obligated to honor me? Not because I need it. Trust me, if I need honor, there are many better ways to get honor than being a father. The reason it's important that my child has these mitzvahs of honoring his mother and father, and really all the mitzvahs, it's not for my benefit. It's not to make my life easier. Like I said, you know the best way to make your life easier? Don't be a parent at all. That's the best way to make your life easier. By the way, if you want to extend the logic, you know how to have the easiest life? Is never to be born. If you want to have the best life possible, just don't be born. I mean, this is, yeah. So these mitzvahs are not for me, they're for my child. It's not for my honor, it's for my child's fulfillment to grow up and to be a mensch. And here's the thing, the minute I start thinking about this relationship in terms of my emotional needs, I miss the whole point. I miss the whole point. Even kibbud av v'ain, even my child's mitzvah to honor me, was not given in order to fulfill my emotional needs. Like I said, again, I don't want to sound cynical, but if I'm trying to meet my emotional needs, there's a lot easier ways to do it than to have kids and hope that they're going to treat you the way that Torah tells them to treat you. The mitzvahs are not for me. It's not for my honor. It's not for my well-being. It's for my child. So here's the message. We are not here as parents to get anything from our children. We're not here to receive anything from them. Not even the honor that Torah tells them that they have to show us. Again, it's not for me, so I'm not here to get that from them. Oh, I'm going to have to try to teach them how to do that, just like I have to try to teach them how to do a lot of things, like don't steal, and learning how to pray, and to meditate, and to how to make blessings before they eat, and thank God, and be grateful for the gifts they're given. There's a lot of things I have to teach my child. But that's not for me. That's not to meet my emotional needs. And the minute I think that any of this is about meeting my emotional needs, I completely miss the point. And worse than that, not only do I miss the point, I poison the entire relationship, and I rob my child of having the emotional stability of a real parent. Because now I'm trying to get instead of give. It's a one-way street. We're here to give to our children. Is it fair? No, I didn't say it's fair. Your relationship with your child is not the place where you're ever going to meet your emotional needs. I said the worst form of abuse is parents who try to use their children to meet their own emotional needs. And it's the worst form of abuse because it's the most insidious. Because a parent who abuses their child, God forbid, in ways that are obviously abusive. So the child grows up and they say, well, that wasn't right. That wasn't right. That was abusive. My parent was using me, was hurting me. That was wrong. Enmeshment means that the child is becoming used by the parent for their own for their own emotional fulfillment. And either saying explicitly or implicitly that their well-being is dependent on the child's behavior. And it's absolutely abusive because that's not what children are for. That's not what our children, yes, our children have a mitzvah to honor us. That's true. But it's not for our benefit. It's for theirs. So the idea that because I have a mitzvah called kibbud av v'em, I'm now going to religiously justify using my child, it's a corruption of the parent-child relationship. It's a corruption of a beautiful mitzvah. It's so wrong in so many ways, spiritually, practically, emotionally. It messes people up for life. Not to say a person can't overcome it. People do overcome it. But think about how much of a mountain you're giving somebody to climb when you're putting them in that situation. Think about it like this. If a parent gives to a child selflessly and builds that child up, what have you given the child? You've given them a sense of self, like Yosef got from his father. His father gave to him a sense of self. He knew he was good. He knew he was strong. He knew he could say no. He was a mensch. Now imagine if instead of giving your child a sense of self, you're trying to steal from the child a sense of self for you. And now your child doesn't even know who they are. You know, there's that old Kotzker Wort. Right? The Kotzker said, As ich bin ich, weil du bist du. Und du bist du, weil ich bin ich. Ich bin nicht ich, und du bist nicht du. Right? You heard this? If I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I. I'm not I, and you are not you. In other words, if I have no sense of self, but I try to find a simulated sense of identity through the context of a dysfunctional relationship, right? I hate myself, but maybe if you love me, I'll be worthy of life, right? That kind of formula for disaster. So when I have no sense of self and I try to find myself in my relationship with someone else, what am I doing? I'm not me because I have no sense of self. And I'm not letting you be you because I'm not interested in you. I'm trying to get myself. I'm trying to get my own validation. Now, that's sick when any two people do that to each other. Now imagine a parent who your whole job is to give the child their sense of self, and instead of giving them a sense of self, you're trying to get your own sense of self from them. So then what happens? They go out into the world, they don't know who they are, they don't have boundaries, they don't think they're allowed to have boundaries, they don't know how to say no, they're pathological people pleasers, they don't know how to find healthy relationships, they don't even know they have the right to such a thing. Forget the fact they don't have a model for it, but they don't even think they have the right to such a thing. But I think it's all too common. I think it's all too common. And if one person hears this and says, oh shoot, I should probably try to meet my emotional needs elsewhere, then I'm glad I said it, okay? But I'm not saying that everybody is to this extreme. Most of us are not to this extreme. That's what makes it an extreme. But there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum. And on a subtle level, when I'm looking to my relationship with my child as anything other than a totally selfless giver, I'm robbing my child. I'm robbing them of the strongest asset that they could take with them into life, which is a strong sense of self. So let's talk about the more benign ways that we try to take from our children. Now, somebody was talking to me the other day about a guy. He was saying it very dismissively. He was saying that this guy, well, you know, he got divorced and he married a trophy wife. And I think everyone's heard that. It's a very crass expression, but I think everyone knows what that is. So it happened to be this person who told me this is somebody that I speak with about parenting. And I said, that's crass, yeah, but How come no one ever talks about a trophy child? They talk about somebody using a spouse or an intimate partner as a badge, as a way of getting social status, and we all sort of agree that that's shallow. How come there's no term for trying to do that with your own children? And you know what my theory is? You know what my theory is, why there's no term for it? It's just so normalized. It's so accepted. Of course, my children owe it to me not to embarrass me. Of course my children owe it to me to be part of my image maintenance team. You know, they work for my PR team. What are people going to think of me? Being a parent means letting yourself know that that's not a healthy thought. It's not a legitimate avenue to go down. Yeah, I understand. I have an ego. My ego likes recognition. It likes positive attention. I will use anything to get recognition and positive attention, even my children. That's natural. But I have to be able to stop myself and say, I can't do that to this child. Because think about it. When I'm using my child to meet my emotional needs, not only am I reversing the entire flow of the relationship, which is supposed to be a giver relationship from me to them, but I'm taking away from them their future ability to go into other relationships and in other situations and be strong and confident and to be able to believe in themselves. Because instead of giving them a strong sense of self, I've been trying to take my sense of self from them. You understand how, I know it's so common and so universal, it almost sounds like I'm a lunatic for ranting this way. Like, what does he want from us? What's the problem? Isn't this what every generation does? Mashiach is coming. This we know. This we know, Mashiach is coming. So sooner or later, every family line is going to heal. One way or another, right? One way or another, every family line has to heal. Do you know what the last prophecy given to the Jewish people through the prophets and recorded in our Bible happens to be? Just so happens to be. The last message that's given as recorded prophecy. It's a messianic prophecy. It's about Elijah the prophet coming on the eve of the redemption. And what's he going to do? It says, V'heshiv leiv oves al b'neihem. He's going to return the hearts of the parents to their children. And then, as a response to that, then b'neihem al avoisam, reciprocally the children to their parents. The last prophecy that we were given, the message that we're supposed to hold on to, is that there was going to come a time when finally we're going to heal all the dysfunction, all the intergenerational trauma. We're going to put it all to rest. And you know how it's going to happen? The hearts of the parents will return to the children, and then the hearts of the children will return to the parents. Not the other way around. Not the other way around. And I see it. I see in this generation something is happening that may be unprecedented. That parents are looking more deep into their role as parents and more introspectively, more soulfully. And it's not just the same old line of, well, I said so, or never promised you that life is fair. I mean, we don't mind saying that to our children. I never promised you that life is fair. But there's a certain maturity, I think, that's happening where parents are finally able to say that line on themselves. Like, say that to yourself. Life isn't fair. You know what that means, life isn't fair? That's such a platitude. It doesn't sound like anything. Let me make it hit where it counts. Life isn't fair means you can totally sacrifice your peace of mind, your health, your time, your body, your hours, everything, your dreams, everything, so that these little people in your house can be comfortable. And not only will they never acknowledge and appreciate how you completely sacrificed yourself so that they could be comfortable, but they're going to have the nerve to go out and find their own way in life and figure things out for themselves and do things you don't like and do things that scare the hell out of you without any feeling that they owe it to you to not give you a nervous breakdown just because you sacrificed your entire life for them. Yep. That's what it means, life isn't fair. We have no problem telling it to kids, life isn't fair. Let's tell it to ourselves, life isn't fair. And I didn't have children in order to have people who are going to meet my needs. And it wasn't a clever plan how to get more honor. It's the exact opposite of that. It's an opportunity to really be selfless. To really be selfless. And to completely take care of the needs of somebody else. So the title of the talk was, what do your teenagers need from you? I'm going to tell you what they need from you. I'm going to tell you what they need from you. They need to know that you are dependable, that you're there for them. They need to know that you're safe. They need to know that your relationship with them is unconditional. That's what they need from you. They need to know that your relationship with them is unconditional. That's what they need from you. What do they get from that? They grow up to be strong, confident people who can actually go out and conquer the world. What do they get from that? What do they get from that? Every child is a soul. Every soul came to the world to do something unique during its embodiment. However many years, months, days, hours that embodiment will last. And one of the biggest factors, if not the biggest factor, that's going to influence how well that soul is able to achieve its purpose this time around in this world is the treatment that it receives from its primary caretakers during its formative years. It's going to influence how well that soul is able to achieve its purpose this time around in this world is the treatment that it receives from its primary caretakers during its formative years. So a little soul comes into the world and doesn't have a sense of being stable and safe and doesn't get that from the adults in his or her life. Okay, so you can well imagine how that plays itself out. A child is going to grow up like Yosef and know that he has strength and he has self-respect and he has values. That's a child who was given that by parents who were not trying to meet any personal need through having children. So let me try to describe it like this. You look at a baby, and the baby, everybody fawns over. Everybody says, oh, how cute. Let me show you the baby pictures. Right? Most babies look the same. I hate to say it, but most babies look the same. But everyone wants to, right? And we love it. And we love to look at babies, love to play with babies. What's the attraction with babies? Now, if you want to be, you could say, well, there's an evolutionary advantage because babies are helpless. So, yeah, you could say that. But give me a spiritual reason. Let's go deeper than that. Let's give ourselves a little bit more credit.
Not their innocence?
Innocence, yeah, but here's the thing. It's not just that we don't fault babies. That's because of their innocence. So they cry in the middle of the night. We don't blame them because they're innocent. But it's much more than that. We fawn over them. We're proud of them. What are you proud of? Because he made in his diaper? He didn't do anything. What are you oohing and eyeing about, right? So I thought about this. There's only 2 times, generally speaking, in a person's lifetime where they automatically get a free pass and everyone says good things about them. So one time is when you're a baby. People will say, oh, he's so wonderful. You didn't do anything, but everyone says you're wonderful. And then what? After you die, right, so then everyone, so after somebody like, oh, he was a tzaddik, he was, okay. So, and by the way, for that, you can't even explain that it's like there's an evolutionary advantage to it. So I don't even know what the naturalist explanation to that would be. But I have an explanation, and I think it's fairly logical. A person, like I said before, is a soul. The soul came to the world. It came to the world for a mission. But what's that old saying? We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we're spiritual beings. And then we visit the world for a period of embodiment. And what happens is we start being misidentified. We start being ID'd as our bodies. And what I mean by our bodies, I don't just mean tall, short, fat, thin. I mean all the stuff that comes with the body. Smart, just the wiring, the way our brains are made, or socially outgoing. Different things that come with having a whole a body and the whole biochemistry and your neural wiring, all the stuff that we call a personality. But it's the trappings of physical embodiment. And you become known for that, and you know yourself for that. That becomes your identity. And if you luck out and you have one that's generally considered appealing, that'll get you far in life. And if not, then you have greater challenges in life. And if your parents don't particularly like your personality or the way that your embodiment expresses itself, then for sure you're going to have some major insecurities, right? But all of that, what I'm saying to you, that's not the real you. The real you was your soul. But people forgot about your soul. And they started identifying you with these secondary, almost accidental traits of embodiment. There's only 2 times when people, generally speaking, remember that we are more than just our embodiment. And that's either when you just got here or you just left. So babies just came to the world. So you kind of, even if you don't articulate it that way, you're sensitive to the fact that this little being came from another world, And then when people pass away, you're cognizant of the fact that they've moved on to, or if they've returned to another world. So what happens when people see us as spiritual, eternal beings? They like us, and they think we're wonderful. And when they see us as transient, transitory, temporary, physical beings, then they have nothing but judgment for us. Even best case scenario where you luck out and they judge you mostly favorably, right? But even that, such pressure to live with. The pressure of having to continue to earn people's approval. And the other eventuality, if you don't earn people's approval, so then that's a terrible burden to carry through life.
And yet, in my own situation, haven't we seen clearly by now that my mom has been treating me in a way as if she is trying to compel me to act in a way such as to earn her approval? Is such a thing, therefore, in light of everything we've beheld here, godly, in fact? No. You're never supposed to have someone who's your son when you're the mother try to have that one earn your approval. That's the very defective foundational problem level thing to begin with in the first place.
But that's not me. That's not the real me. That's not my soul. If you would know my soul, you would have a totally different opinion of me. You would have a totally different value of me. So here's what I want to tell you. It is the job of parents not to be fooled by the child's embodiment. And that just like when your child was a baby, you were aware that there's something special and there's a gift here, and this is a gift. I didn't make this child. I mean, this is beyond something. I can't go to the workshop and make one of these. This is a miracle, right? This is sent from beyond. And just like we had that feeling of this child is wonderful, and they didn't do anything, and they didn't earn your acceptance, and they didn't earn your validation. You didn't tell your baby, you know what, you can't even talk. How can I know if I like you? Grow up, learn to carry a conversation. We'll go out for coffee, and I'll find out if I like you. You didn't. No one said that, right? No one would say that to a child, to a baby. Why? Because with a baby, you understand they don't need to be able to carry on a conversation to have value, because you're seeing them as a soul, and a soul has intrinsic value. So here's what I'm telling you. The same way you are able to look at a baby, and the same way, God forbid, someone passes away, you're able to see them. That's how we have to look at people in the in-between times, during the embodiment. And even during the awkward phase of embodiment called the adolescent years, where most people are unlikable. It's true. No one met teenagers here? You do have to realize as their parent that they're the same soul. The same soul as before their embodiment, the same soul there will be after their embodiment. And what that means is that irrespective of how you like their behavior and their appearance and their demeanor, forget that. That's all about how you are feeling about it. That's all about your feelings. Forget that. Let's talk about objective truth. This child is a soul. And that means that they are intrinsically worthy, unconditionally worthy, and infinitely worthy. So 3 things that I talk about in the parenting course. That a soul, and therefore every child, is intrinsically worthy, unconditionally worthy, and infinitely worthy. Intrinsically worthy means their worth comes from within. They don't have to go out and do something to get it. It doesn't have to be acquired. Unconditional means they can't lose it. There's nothing they can do to lose their worth. So the real value of a soul can't be lost, but it can't even be embellished. It's already as great as it could possibly be. I had a teacher who, when he was 13 years old, this was back in the 1950s, when every 13-year-old bar mitzvah boy had yechidus, had a private audience with the Rebbe. So, which is crazy if you think about it. So he asked, Ushlem Mizarchi. So he asked his teacher, who was Rabbi Yoel Khan, Olav Shalom, when I go into yechidus, how am I supposed to conduct myself? So Rabbi Yoel, in the classic, harsh Russian, gruff style, he says, forget it, I'll go instead of you. So he's like, no, I'm just asking, when I go into yechidus, some private audience with the Rebbe, how do I conduct myself? He says, no, I'll go instead of you. So I was like, I'm just asking, how am I? He says, listen to me. Gan Selim Hazeh Alma de Shikru. This world, the physical world, is a false world. Normally when we say that, we mean things aren't what they seem, that we see things and we buy into the delusion that there's creation without creator, right? That's what we mean when we say the world is a false world. But that's not how Rabbi Yoel meant it in that context. What he meant was the physical world's a false world. It means that in this world where you're embodied, you don't see your true self. So the falsehood means you're divorced from your own true identity. the soul. And you play a role and you go through life. People think you're something and you even think that you're something, and it's not really who you are. So Rabbi Yoel says to the bar mitzvah boy, he says, in this world of falsehood, there's one daled ames, 4 cubits, meaning one little compartment of emes. There's one place where you are the real you. And in the one place where you are the real you, you're asking me how to behave? So I told them, you're going into the aisle to the Rebbe's resting place, which is Yechidus. It's a one-on-one meeting. That's what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said he said it about his father-in-law's resting place, that it's a one-on-one meeting. So I said, one-on-one meeting with the Rebbe is an opportunity to be seen for who you really are. And, you know, if you ever met anyone who even went by the Rebbe for dollars, for half a second, what do they say? Is like, I felt someone really saw me. I felt seen, right? So what are you going to see? Okay, you're not going to see that because it's very different going into the aisle than going by for dollars. But what you see is irrelevant here. What's really important is how you are seen. And what's happening is you're being seen for your real self. And when you go into the aisle and you present yourself to a tzaddik, who's a loving father, who sees you for who you really are, then you leave from that interaction feeling empowered to live up to that. Okay? I didn't want to make this about Yechidus and oil and Rebbe, but I think this is very important. You want to know what a parent has the ability to do? A parent has the ability to be that for their child. The way the Lubavitcher Rebbe was able to look at you and make you feel that you're the only thing in the world and that your value is infinite and unconditional and intrinsic. Every parent can do that for their child. I want to tell you something. The worst people for this message, I said this in Crown Heights, and the Lubavitchers all came to me afterwards, and they said, it's not true. The Rebbe didn't. I said, well, what are you talking about? The Rebbe was always demanding from people. I said, that's true. Do you know how the Rebbe was able to get away with demanding from people? Because the Rebbe looked at every Jew as already being enough, being perfect. You couldn't be more than you already are. And since you're already perfect, who you are is perfect. You couldn't be any more perfect. Now it's only logical to ask you to express that in your deeds. That's how the Rebbe was able to get away with that. Every parent can and should do the same exact thing. Tell your child. You don't have to tell them. They know. You can't lie. The eyes don't lie. When you light up, when they enter the room, they will know that you see them as intrinsically worthy.
And now it makes sense that when this particular woman here shown in this video, Dr. Shefali Tzabari, was personally acting as a particular therapist for both me and my mom directly with a virtual call, that when she saw how my mother looked at me when she turned to me to talk about me to this doctor, why Dr. Shefali responded immediately to her and said, Miss, hold on right there. Stop what you're doing. The problem I'm seeing is with the very root of it is already shown in the way that you're looking at your son when you behold him. How are you looking at him? Why are you looking at him with this kind of look? Is completely barren of actual love and compassion and empathy and joy. What happened? That's not his fault. It can't be his fault, morally and properly speaking. It can only be your fault. What happened?
And infinitely worthy and unconditionally worthy. And then when they know that that sense of self is rock solid, you can ask them to do a lot. You probably won't even have to ask because they'll feel up to the task. And that's the power that parents have. That's the power that we really have. The power we have is to give our children a self-concept to give our children a strong sense of worthiness and value and self-respect. But in order to do that, in order to give our children that sense of self, we have to be super, super careful not to infringe, not to misappropriate any of the emotional energy in the relationship. Because it's all supposed to go this direction. It's all supposed to be flowing from us to them. We're supposed to be the consummate selfless givers in the relationship.
But during that therapy meeting virtually with Dr. Shefali Tabari, my mom had those grumpy, cold, dead eyes turning over at me, looking with almost contempt and disgust as she was complaining and whining to Dr. Shefali, going, but my son, he doesn't do this, he doesn't provide this, he doesn't perform this, he doesn't earn my respect, he does not earn he does not work hard enough so that I can approve of him enough. Now you understand why it will never work. It's an impossible equation that you've been delusionally living into your whole life. Because it never was supposed to work that way to begin with.
Give them a sense of self that's strong enough to go out into the world and to achieve and to fulfill their mission that their soul came here for.
Oh, wow, what a concept. Hold on. That means he's saying that, in other words, it's not first the son that has to do something, regardless of where he got the capacity to do it. He just has to perform, and only then the mother correspondingly approves afterwards to say, oh, now it's good, now it's happy, now it's fine. Or is he saying that it's the opposite, actually? How God programmed this whole universe to work. That first the parent, and especially doubly so speaking, the yin parent, the mother, is supposed to first input the approval to the child, full and unconditional, automatic already, and then it's because of that that the child used that as the prerequisite, and necessarily so, the prerequisite fuel to enable him to become capable of doing the kinds of things that furthermore both he himself and his parents would be happy and proud of. Is the opposite. So, Mom, when you're not putting in the gasoline, but you're stupidly sitting in the driver's seat trying to hit the gas pedal and it's not going, and then you're complaining to the person who sold you the car, why is it not working? Because you have to do the thing first, not me.
So we got to always check in with ourselves, and we got to always be We've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to check our motives and make sure our motives are clean. Am I trying to take from my child? Am I trying to get social proof from my child? You know, I want to be seen with my child in a certain light. I want my child to be known in a certain way. Am I trying to get validation from my child? Tell me I'm good. Tell me I work hard. Tell me you appreciate what I did.
Get me a chair.
It's not cute. Is it difficult? It's very difficult. It's more than difficult. It's painful. It's thankless. It's exhausting. And if you're lucky, you have a spouse who's also ready to do this with you, and you can just look at each other and say, this is awful, but we're in it together, so let's just finish. Let's get to the end. Let's raise these kids, right? But that's best case scenario, right? Nobody's getting validation off of this thing. But if you can do it, if you can be there for your child, to be their safe person, you're setting them up for life.
Ah, you mean it's not safe to come down here, fight with me, rob me of my dignity, turn your back to me, criticize everything I'm doing, and then when I criticize you back, you run up and get your boyfriend, tell him to come down here, start almost an argumentative fight with me first, and then to start a real fight afterwards, that he initiates it. And then he's gonna push my grandpa down. Later, you rob my grandfather out of this apartment and send him to Poland, where he ends up getting controversially and found dead. You fucking evil people still don't understand what the hell it is, the sick shit that you're doing, and why? All in your desperate attempt to try to get John to believe, yes, see, it's you who's bad. It's you who's bad. You have to see you're bad. Why do you want your son to have a self-identity and self-referencing frame that he's bad? Healthy people are programmed by their parents to understand that they're good. Only sick parents try to program their own seed to see themselves as bad. You idiots.
Somebody once told me, if my kid ever does something stupid and gets in trouble, I don't want him to say, oh no, if my dad finds out, he'll kill me. I want him to say, oh no, I better call my dad. Are you a safe person? Are you a supportive person? Does your child know that they can mess up and they won't lose you?
Would you call the police on your own son, open his own apartment door illegally, have them take him to a hospital, call the hospital yourself, even though no one invited you to, so you could slander your own son to the people there, and then proceed for the next 12 months to be functionally completely irreconciled to him because you're just continuing the same game of you trying to get your son to do something for you or to validate you? It's opposite.
Because these things are super important. They have to do with your child's entire future, their entire ability to succeed in life, and to feel that they're worthy people who are worthy of respect and worthy of respectful treatment from others and worthy of having goals and worthy of pursuing dreams. So much is riding on this. And I'll tell you even more. I'll tell you even more to up the ante. If you're religious, so ostensibly you care about your child's relationship with God, there's nothing that influences a child's God concept more than their relationship with their parental figures. I've had rabbis, scholars tell me, I can show you in the books that God is good and that God cares and God forgives, but I can't believe it's true for me. And the simple reason is because I grew up knowing that I was never enough. I wasn't worthy. And I can't get it out of my head. What your child thinks of you, by extension, is going to be their default theological position about God.
And it's only by the saving grace of God, in fact, that I ended up being put down a path that ended up having me end up in a research chemical-induced coma, upregulating my receptors, resetting my GABA B neural system, and reawakening my life and my awareness and my spirit activation, soul activation in a sense, to the degree that it was. So that for the first time ever, I actually understood the things correctly. After that, it didn't matter how functional or dysfunctional my relationship with my parents were, because I could still see the God essence through that and beyond that, despite that.
Think about that. Think about that. So now, think about how high the stakes are. Your reliability, your being a safe person, a non-judgmental person, a go-to person. Think about their default theological position about God. I wasn't worthy. And I can't get it out of my head. What your child thinks of you, by extension, is going to be their default theological position about God. Think about that. Think about that. So now, think about how high the stakes are. Your reliability, your being a safe person, a non-judgmental person, a go-to person. This is a lot more than just being pleasant, being nice, being easy to get along with. This has to do with your child's entire future on every level, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, religiously. So how can we afford to misappropriate any of the spiritual energy of that relationship for personal fulfillment? We can't afford it. That's not what it's there for. And I don't want to sound harsh. I'm with you. I'm a parent too. I'm in this together with you. Okay? I'm commiserating with you. It's a thankless job. It's not glorious. It's not glamorous. But this is the job. And there's no more powerful thing that any human being can do than to raise another human being. The Gemara tells us that a parent is a co-creator. Gemara says that there are three partners in the creation of a human being. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, va'avi v'imai. The Holy One, his father and his mother. We're co-creators. What does that mean we're co-creators? I'm not even talking from a mystical perspective, being a co-creator. What I mean is, you walk down the street and some poor person asks you for $5, you give them $5. Okay, that's a mitzvah, that's very nice. You changed their moment, you changed their day. Maybe if it really inspired them, it changed their month. Or let's say even you're a big philanthropist, so you have the ability, you didn't give a homeless guy $5. Let's say you were able to build the building, you wrote the $5 million check. Okay, great, beautiful. So you changed a lot of people's lives in a lot of ways. Okay, huge influence. But you want to know something? Even that influential, you're still not a co-creator. You're not a co-creator of those people who you influenced and affected and benefited. You're an influence. You're a positive force in their life. You're not a co-creator. You didn't make them who they are. A child, you are a co-creator, for better, for worse. You make them who they are. And that's why I'm telling you, and I've seen it time and time again, what 1,000 experts, teachers and therapists and rabbis and mashpiyim and a whole team, you could hire them, could put them all together and have an entire team, put them all on the payroll, 1,000 experts just dealing with providing for a child. What that team of 1,000 experts could do will never come close to what one parent can do for that same child. We have an infinite power. We're co-creators along with Hashem. And yes, sometimes that means that we do hire the therapist or we hire the tutor and we pay tuition to the school. Doesn't mean we do all the work ourselves. We don't grow our food in our garden either. We go to the grocery store and we buy it, right? So just like you can go buy food at the grocery store, you can hire the tutor, the therapist, or whatever. But the power for all of that to actually be life-changing comes from you as the parent. Without the parent in that equation, it's almost pointless. I've seen it time and time again. The parents who are writing the checks, so they have the experts raising their kids for them, but the parental investment on an emotional level isn't there. So the whole thing lacks that power. We don't realize, we underestimate our own power. That our relationship with our child, the fact that our child feels safe with us and feels loved and feels accepted, that's not icing on the cake. That is the cake, and it's and more and more. Their entire future, their entire well-being, their success in life, their ability to be married and to have a happy life and to raise children in a healthy way themselves and to have a healthy relationship with God and to have a positive outlook on life and to have a loving and gentle and compassionate look at their own self. Everything is dependent on our ability to completely show up selflessly for them, even when they are insufferable, annoying teenagers who scare you. So that's what our teens need from us. Don't let them scare you off. Don't let them annoy you. Don't let them frustrate you, because when you do that, you're depriving them of the most potent healing power that they have in their lives. And that is, what is the most potent healing power that that teenager has in their life? You. Oh, I'm not so smart. I don't know how to. You don't need to be smart. You just need to be you. Connect with your child. Look in your child's eyes. Be present for them. Put the phone away. Make them feel that you have nothing else going on in your mind. Like I told you, the way the Lubavitcher Rebbe would look at people. People would get that look for a half a second, it would change their life. That, to me, by the way, proves the quality over quantity. If you look at someone like that for a half a second, it changes their life. A lot of times people complain, like, oh, I don't have enough time. Well, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. You know, sometimes there isn't enough time in the day. But what about that minute that you can spend with your child? Can you try to meditate on the fact that this is the same baby that I looked at in the crib and I felt nothing but approval and pride? I was kvelling. They did nothing. They didn't need to do anything because I didn't judge them based on what they could do. I cherished them for who they were and will always be, for their essence. That's what we need to do. And if this is the last thing I'm going to tell you. If one family can do this, and another family, but just one family at a time, can produce one more healthy adult in the world at a time. Cumulatively, the effect is that the entire world becomes a healthier place. Think about the fact all the problems in the world are caused by people. Without people, there won't be any problems. People cause all the problems. And all the problems that people cause, generally speaking, is because they have problems, right? They say hurt people hurt people. People who have been hurt go out and they hurt others. And most people have problems from early childhood, from their formative years, and most of that from their own parents. So think about the fact that if we could just have the next generation have just a little bit less issues from their parents, a little bit more love, a little more acceptance, that those people would grow up to make less problems in the world, or maybe even have a positive influence in the world. And then the cumulative effect would be the whole world would be a better place. And that, my friends, is what we Jews call Mashiach, the perfected world, the vision that our prophets had. And then I'm not saying this is what the prophecy means. We have to wait and see how it unfolds. But it's very apparent to me that would really be in line with the last prophecy that was given to us by the prophet Malachi, that the hearts of the parents will return to the children, the children will return to the parents, and that's messianic perfection. We have a whole world of healing. But it starts in each home. It starts in each home with each parent and each child.